This podcast is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells of the Rising Dawn series. Do you like violence? Do you like smut? Are you tired of the stereotypical novels of werewolf romance out there and want something a little bit different? Then pick up Sparked Revolution, Book 1 in the Rising Dawn series by Rebecca Cassells. Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and paperback. You too can become a sponsor of Stories, The True and the Fictional by heading on over to buymeacoffee.com/STTATF or follow the link in the show notes. Hello guys and welcome to another episode of Stories, The True and the Fictional. We thought we'd get someone back on for the third time. How are you going, Jack?
Good. Great to see you again, Jamie. Do I get frequent flyer points for coming back for the third time?
No, but you get to try out the new set of I don't call them icebreakers this time. I call them like quick fire.
Okay.
I only just came up with them, so we had another guest, one of our sponsors, Martin Kearns. He came on for a third time, but I didn't think of these questions at that point. So, he'll be back on in a few weeks, and he'll get to try them. But you get to try them out for the first time.
All right. Well, in the spirit of Jamie Bryden, I've got my flat cap, so
Yes.
I'm good to go.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so these are just quick fire questions. They won't be too complicated. Just so like the what do you say when you go to like the psychiatrist and they hold up the board and they go, "What do you see?" You know, just
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
just react to
Okay.
these as best you can.
Okay.
All right. So number one, fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction,
Hmm. Fantasy or science fiction?
science fiction.
Okay. What's the first book you remember reading?
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. That's a good one. How old were you? Like, were you
I was
like
at school. It was one
school?
of those
Yeah.
ones where it was actually excruciating. It was one of those situations where we had to read it for English. I think I was in maybe about grade 7, and it was one where all the kids had to take turns reading. So you'd be in class and everyone was reading out loud. So each kid got to read like a paragraph, and some kids struggled, and it's pretty difficult text to read,
Yeah.
and it would be so laborious. And I that's why I always found it so hard to get through The Hobbit because I never actually got a chance to really read it. It was sort
Yeah.
of a shared project.
Yeah. And it's a short book too. Pretty short compared to his other works.
Well, yeah, I've
Okay.
I've read all the Lord of the Rings books, so
Mm,
yeah, I read those as an adult and I really loved them.
yeah.
So I haven't actually read The Hobbit since I've been an adult. I should go back and
Yeah.
read it again.
Yeah. Go for it. Okay. So what's the last book you read?
Last book I read was a James Patterson. I'm Michael Bennett, part of the Michael Bennett series, and James Patterson. I finished that last week.
Okay. So what's a book that's on your to read list that you haven't gotten to yet?
I've just started reading a book called The Community. It's a local author, Christine Gregory. She's an Australian-based author. I actually got a signed copy from her. I did a bit of a consultation session with her to help her with her writing authentic crime fiction. There's a bit of a dedication in the
Oh,
back of her
awesome.
book to yours truly. So I'm really looking forward to getting into her book to support a local author. She's a wonderful local author, Christine Gregory. The
Mm,
Community. Check it out. Bit
okay.
of a plug.
Plug. All right. Now this is one I really like. This one. Do you remember an old show? I'm sure you do, called Gumby.
Yes.
Yeah. You remember how he used to jump into the worlds of books? You know, like.
Hmm.
So my question is, if you could be Gumby, or have his ability to jump into a book, what book would you want to jump into?
I reckon, yeah, Lord of the Rings, because I've been so immersed in Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
for so long, I reckon that would be a cool universe to be in.
Yeah. Be scary.
It will be.
Would you go to Hobbiton first? You know, before it's destroyed.
I think so. I think Hobbiton would be a good place to start. It's very
Yeah.
civil and, plenty of food and friendly people and
Yeah.
greenery. And, before we start, battling against orcs, I think
Yeah.
Hobbiton would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. If you could have anyone read your favorite book to you, who would you choose?
Adam Sandler.
Really?
I don't know why his name came into my head, but I just think I reckon he'd put an interesting spin on things.
He do a lot of funny voices too. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. What's a book that is not on the best-selling list but should be?
Oh, there's a book called Ragdoll by what's his name? Surname Cole. I read it. I think it's one of the most underrated books. It's a murder mystery serial killer.
Mhm.
It's called Ragdoll. I can't remember his first name. Is it David Cole, Danny Cole? But brilliant, absolutely brilliant, brilliant. It's a very underrated. Should have got a lot more airtime than it did.
Yeah, plenty of them out there. All right. If you could do a crossover of two books from two different authors, combining, the authors, uh, who would you choose?
I think probably two of my favorite authors are Australian authors. My most recent favorite author who I've sort of recently discovered is Gary Disher. He's an Australian
Mhm.
author that writes kind of rural crime, sort of noir rural crime. He's got a series. He's got tons of books out. He's a very accomplished Australian author, but his Hirsch series set in a small outback town. And Trent Dalton. I love his way with words, particularly Boy Swallows Universe and All Our Shimmering Skies. I really like those two books in particular. If you were to mesh those two together, I think that would be a brilliant story.
Nice, nice. All right, final one, and this is the big one. You're in charge of the education department for one day. What book do you put into the school curriculum?
Oh, geez, I don't know. It'd have to be something to really kind of stir things up a little bit. Um, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that one. What's something a little bit uh what's the word I'm after? Um,
Out there, or just
out there.
yeah,
Well, there's a word I'm looking for. It's too early in the morning. I need another coffee. Controversial, something
yeah,
controversial.
something controversial.
Um, no, look, I don't know. I mean, what about Honeybee by Craig Silvey?
All right.
It's a transgender theme, very contemporary. He's won a lot of awards. It's been a very, very well acclaimed book. So I don't know whether something like that would, I'm not sort of taking the piss now. I'm being
No,
serious. That
yeah,
might be something that might be, whether
yeah,
the schools could look into something like that.
yeah. No, I always find like something that develops the critical thinking skills of kids, because I think that's something that's lacking a lot at the moment. You got to learn how to think, learn how to have different discussions from different views. I think that's something that's really lacking. But
What was the book? Is it the farmhouse farm? What it was written in the 50s.
Mhm.
The animals in the farm, and it was very much about, it had underlying themes around the Nazism and sort of
All right.
post World War II. And I might have to come back and do some research on that one.
Yeah. Who's the author?
Was it not H.G. Wells? It was
You know what we'll do? We'll figure it out and I'll pop it up on the screen when we've edited
yeah.
it. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's it. You've answered the questions. I hope you enjoyed them. This podcast is brought to you by Martin Kearns and the Valor of Valhalla series. In the battle between two ancient evils, can one naive young man become the last hope against powerful creatures of legend? Beneath the Veil is the gripping first book in the Valor of Valhalla dark urban fantasy series. If you like reluctant heroes, infernal myths, and bloody epic clashes, then you'll love Martin Kearns' formidable foray into the unknown. So head on over to readkearns.com and grab yourself a copy of Beneath the Veil today. Well, let's crack into business. Just give your wonderful podcast a quick plug. So in case no one, or if anyone's listening new and they don't know about it, you have your own podcast, the Genre Fiction Podcast.
Yeah, it's called the Genre Fiction Podcast. My partner in crime, Harry Colfer, he's another. He's a paramedic that writes crime fiction. I'm a former police officer that writes crime fiction. We've come together, and we now interview quality people like yourself, Jamie, and authors and industry experts in the writing or publishing industry, and we come together and just have a chat. So I've actually got a podcast tonight with a gentleman from the UK. So we're getting some international guests. So
Hmm.
the genre fiction podcast. It's been keeping us busy, and I tell you what, we're at a stage now where people are just approaching us.
Yeah,
You do the initial grind where you're trying to
yeah,
find guest speakers and ask if
yeah,
people will come on. And now I guess it's a good sign that people are slowly starting to become aware of our podcast. And
yeah.
as a result, we're getting some really high caliber authors and industry experts saying, "Hey, would you mind if I come on your show with it?" Well,
Mhm.
our humble little podcast.
Yeah,
So it's going great guns.
yeah. No, it was the same with us. Once we started doing interviews, it was just like, I think initially I just put a post out on one of the author groups on Facebook, and it was just like bombarded, and I had to make a whole schedule and have like 6 months of guests,
Yeah.
all lined up, and it's just amazing. You got to knuckle down and do the hard work, but then next thing you know, you're getting all these emails. Can I come on? Can I come on?
Yeah, and scheduling because Harry, he's a shift worker, so we're trying to work him
Oh,
with. I'm probably more of a man of leisure compared to him now, and which
yeah,
he often reminds me. So we've got to fit in with his shift work, and so I've got like a really rough kind of spreadsheet sheet. Well, I think we've got about 12 people booked in over the next couple of months already
yeah,
booked in. Um, but what we do is when people approach us, what we say is 'cause we get publicists approach us and saying we've got a client who's got a new
yeah,
book coming out. Could they come on your podcast to talk about your book? And we'll often say, yeah, look, that's cool. We love talking to authors from all over the place. But what our point of difference is our podcast is about sharing information to our
yeah,
listeners. So our listeners are predominantly writers.
yeah,
So rather than having a guest come on and say, "So tell us about your book,"
yeah,
it gets a bit of a stale conversation unless we've
yeah,
actually read the book.
yeah,
It's very difficult to sort of push the conversation forward. So what
yeah,
we say to guests, look, if you're going to come on the show, look, we'll have a chat about you and your writing journey, which writers always want to know about. How did you come to
yeah,
be published, and
yeah,
what were your learnings from the journey? But also, what information can you share? So, do you have some,
yeah,
some niche topics that perhaps you can speak on with some authority?
yeah,
So the conversation isn't just about, a plug for your book. It's
yeah,
what's some genuine learnings that you can impart to our listeners. And so as a result, we're getting some really, really good conversations, and people are coming up with, with a whole range of kind of topics that we can talk
yeah,
about. So it's really
yeah,
starting to get traction. And it's interesting, these sort of things like having a podcast, it creates other opportunities because you get
yeah.
to know people and they invite you. I've been getting invites to writers' festivals and speaking panels and
Hmm.
coming to different writers' groups and library presentations, all these little things because it's amazing the power of just putting yourself out there in
Yeah,
terms of author marketing.
yeah. Networking, social media plays is just massive. Like
Mm.
how easy it is just to reach out to people. I mean, we had a Australian dark fantasy author on Amy Cormac a couple of weeks ago, and he just did the same thing. He just reached out and then to all these different authors, and because he's relatively new, and then he ended up going to, I think he had friends in town for Supernova, and they were all from all parts of Australia. And then he said, "Oh, we got together and they had like a dinner and talking about their work and their writing and giving each other tips." And it was just like, that's the stuff I like to hear about.
Yeah, and they talk about finding your tribe. I think that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about the writing industry in particular, is there's so many wonderful people out there, and I've met so many people I can now call friends that I've met in the last couple of years since
Mhm.
I've left my day job and started focusing on being an author kind of more full time. The
Yeah.
wonderful people I've met in the writing industry, and they're humble. A lot of them are introverts,
Yeah.
but they just want to, they want to connect with like-minded people. So that's what I'm really loving about, learning this rope of being a podcaster and engaging with
Yeah.
people and letting them sort of have their voice and connect with other people. I think it's a powerful thing. This the power of being a podcaster.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with people.
Yeah. 100%. Well, look, you've touched on a few times about becoming a full-time author, so I figured, let's get some advice. Let's dig into that a little bit. How did you find the transition from, I mean, all those years as a police officer, as a detective, and then into this completely different kind of field?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a slow transition. First of all, it was the decision to leave the police after 34 years as a police officer. That was a big decision. So I kind of lamented over that for probably a couple of years before I finally took some time off I took a year of career break. It was unpaid leave just to let myself settle on a decision. Am I going to stick with the police until they wheel me out in a with a walking frame, or do I pull the pin now and explore other things in life? So I finally reached that decision, but then there was kind of a transition period, and I think I'm sort of I've been out of the police now a bit over 2 years, and I think I'm just coming out of that transition period because I have been working part-time in the training sector as a trainer. Um, Teaching a course called government investigation. So teaching people who work in law enforcement for different Australian government agencies. So I was working for an RTO delivering a Cert 4 qualification course. And I've been doing that part-time for the last couple of years. So I've only just wrapped that up so that I could start to focus on my kind of author life now and on my side projects. But yeah, I think for anyone who's thinking of doing it, clearly you still got to be able to have money coming in and support the family and put food on the table. It's a massive decision to leave the security of of your career to move into writing, because as we all know, there's not a lot of money to be made in writing. So you never do it for financial reasons.
No.
You do it because you want to pursue something that you love.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I did it, because I just felt I was being suffocated by government bureaucracy, and I just needed to shed that and shed the old persona and move into kind of rediscover who I am. And so the transition into full-time author, I think, is still happening. It's been a slow transition. I think what's been healthy for me is that I think if you were just writing, it would be a pretty lonely existence and also very frustrating, because I've only just, even though I've got 4 books published, I'm currently tinkering with a completed brand new manuscript. So you're gonna have periods where there's nothing happening and you're not publishing books and there's no income coming in. I think what's keeping me going is the fact that I've got all these side projects now that's happening from which are stemming off the podcast and speaking opportunities. A lot of speaking events coming up, and as I said, library speaking opportunities. So it's all these extra secondary things which are really starting to take up my time, but I love doing it. So. And I have to say that I couldn't do it without the support of my wife. She's now the breadwinner. She's a professional, and she's got her own business, and I couldn't do it without my family support, my wife's support. So I definitely had a plan B. I had a security blanket, but it's enabled me to just rediscover the world and myself, and see what else I can achieve through my writing interest. So I'm absolutely loving the journey. I was terrified to leave a government job that I'd been in for 34 years to just completely jump off the side of the boat, and hopefully I can swim. But so far I'm just loving the experience.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a lot of people's dreams, and I think the one thing they forget about is that you're not going to be like, it's a very slim chance that you'll be the next Stephen King or the next, like, big author, and I'm new to writing, and I haven't even done any courses or anything like that. I'm just learning as I go on the way. I've already got an idea for my Magnus Opum, or whatever they call it. Magnus Magnum Opus, that's the word. you know um
Can you share that? What's the idea?
Oh, well, look, I've for the first time I started reading, what is it? War of the Worlds,
Hmm.
and it's just rekindled an old idea. It's an old idea it's been a screenplay. I've tried to write a book. It keeps changing, and um, I don't know, turning into other things and that. But it's a futuristic sci-fi, alien invasion, but far 500 to 1,000 years in the future, where they've basically colonized the planet, and humanity's like, um in tribes, and it's like we're still being hunted and all that's kind of the premise. um
Uh,
but
I just
it's
finished watching the latest Planet of the Apes movie. So, and I
mm,
actually went back and watched the original 1968
yeah,
Charlton Heston
yep,
version. So, what you're saying kind of has a bit of a Planet of the Apes kind of feel to it.
yeah. What did you think of the latest one?
Not too bad. Pretty
Yeah.
good. Pretty good.
Did you notice that it was filmed in Australia?
I wondered that because I noticed that the gum trees in the background when they were
Yeah,
walking through some vegetation. I thought that really looks like Australian landscape. I
yeah,
didn't realize that. There you
yeah.
go.
a lot of it was filmed south of Sydney. The train tunnel, the old
Yes,
tunnel.
yeah.
As soon as I came on the screen, I'm like, I know where that is. You
Oh,
know,
wow. Okay.
it's like Helensburgh. But I was just kind of blown away. Like it was like a simple story. It was almost like hero's journey in so many
Mm.
ways, and it was just like a different take, and I quite liked it.
I like the way, I won't give any spoilers, but I kind of like the way the movie ended,
Hmm.
which kind of sets it down a different trajectory.
Yeah,
Like if you go back to the original 1968 version, where I think by the time the aircraft crashes, they've worked out that they're about 2,000 years in the future.
yeah,
And what they're saying is that by this stage, humanity is this a bunch of, mutes who can't speak, who
yeah,
low intelligence, and they're
yeah,
very low in the food chain, and the apes have taken over the world,
yeah,
and they've got this high levels of intelligence,
yeah,
and it was kind of almost like humanity's doomed. But in this latest movie, it's almost like there's a suggestion that there's a resurgence. The humans are coming back, and I
yeah,
wonder where that's going to lead to on the next
yeah,
step, the next
yeah,
movie. Whether there's going to be,
yeah,
the humans are starting to relocate their old technology, and there's going to be a
yeah,
resurgence of the humans, and is it
yeah,
going to lead us into a big confrontation between the two species, or
yeah,
there's that question of, can apes and humans coexist? Maybe
yeah,
that's where it's headed. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. No, it was remarkable. And we're ever so closer to the timeline of the classic. That because the one thing I've loved about the whole franchise is that with every movie, the apes are getting better at talking. They're getting, well, it was still a little like breaky and mumbly here and there, but
Yeah.
by the Charlton Heston one, they're all like, "Hello, I'm a monkey," you know,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I look forward to that. If they do one where it's just suddenly they're like, "Hello, I'm Caesar," and not, you know,
Yes, and they've got the hierarchy. Whereas these apes are still very primitive, and they've only
yeah,
just starting to discover human technology, and
yeah,
they're kind of just on the brink of that next step of kind of evolution.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, that was a good tangent.
Yeah, where were we?
Um,
We were
uh,
talking about your book and how there was some similarities.
yeah, similarity. Yeah, no, so yeah, like I got the idea from ah, when was it? This video game called Horizon Zero Dawn came out, like probably 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And the whole premise was that humanity basically destroyed our entire planet. And the last thing we did was create, I guess, like an AI robotic system that kind of rebuilt the Earth, like with machines. And then so we've gone back to tribalism. And so you've got these robotic machines that are being built automatically to clean the earth, and they're getting very uh, violent, and they've got a virus of some sort. And then so that you've got these tribal people hunting robotic machines that are essentially dinosaurs but robots with bows and arrows and stuff like that. And it's just like I had that idea of mankind going back to like almost like tribes, but fighting off these fierce aliens that have come to Earth and basically pushed us out into the fringes of the wilderness and stuff like that. But it's still a work in progress. I'm still trying to settle on a plot and everything. But
I think the interesting thing about these kind of not too distant future dystopian stories is that people can kind of see that's where we're heading.
yeah,
It's almost it's within the realms of possibility. Now that
yeah,
AI is starting to
yeah,
emerge, all the issues with climate change, and the fact that we are destroying our environment. It's posing the question of, this is the direction we're heading in.
yeah,
And I think, that's what I like about the dystopian stories, which are set
yeah,
on Earth. It's real world stories. It's that
yeah,
what if, as
yeah,
opposed to, fantasy or sci-fi set
yeah,
in alternate worlds. I've
yeah,
always liked the ones that are set on Earth, because
yeah,
it actually poses a
yeah.
realistic question.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love them when like there's a sense of like it's believable to a point. I love grounded movies. But I don't know if you've seen an old movie called The Road with
Yeah,
Viggo Mortensen.
yes, yes. It was
Yeah,
based off of what's his name, Cormac, based off an original novel,
yeah,
Cormac
yeah,
McCarthy.
yeah. And I just love it
Yeah,
because it's grounded. It's like one of my
yeah.
favorite superhero movies is Logan. The last the the supposed to be the last Hugh Jackman Wolverine movie. Um, but that was I love it because even though it's superpowers and comic book, it's grounded, and I love stuff that's grounded.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It's funny that you mentioned Wolverine. My son, he's 20. He's going to take me to the movies today. There's a midday session. He's going to take me to the movies to see Deadpool and Wolverine.
Wolverine,
He
oh,
said,
it's so
"Dad, do you want me to take you to movies?" I'm thinking, hang on, man. The roles have reversed here. How many times over the years I've taken hand in hand, taken my kids to the
yeah,
movies? Now I'm thinking, is this the sign that I need to get my Zimmer frame out? And I'm the
yeah,
old man, and he's going to be taking me by the elbow, and
yeah,
he's taking old dad to the movies. So
yeah,
he's I love him to death. He's a
yeah.
that's the sort of kid he is.
Yeah, well, as of recording, it's crossed the 1 billion at the box office.
Wow.
And that's massive. So it's the first like R-rated movie to, you know, cross that
Oh,
level.
okay.
Um,
Right.
it is brilliant. I will say that it is brilliant. Just be warned, it's very yeah, it's violent and there's lots of language and it's not for kids, but apparently by box office numbers, people have been taking their kids, you know.
I didn't realize it was R-rated.
Yeah, have you seen the other ones?
Yeah, I've seen the
Deadpool,
others.
Deadpool. Well, it's MA here, but American. I don't think America has MA. They go straight to R.
Oh, I
But
see.
yeah, we're more tame here in Australia, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, um, yeah. No, I've seen it twice. It's a good laugh. Um, and
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
as always, stay till the end credits. Like
Yes, there's always the post-credit
there's
scene.
always something at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Worth the wait.
Speaking of Ryan Reynolds, are you following Welcome to Wrexham? It's a Welsh
Yeah,
football
yeah.
club that
I've watched the first season, and I love it. I've been following Wrexham, but I haven't been watching the doco all that much. But
yeah. Well, the third season just finished. It's well
yeah,
worth it. It's very cool.
yeah, yeah.
So I think this new this extra injection of fame and money through the new Deadpool movie is going to certainly help. I think it's
Yes,
going to help
yeah,
Wrexham with the sponsorship and more
uh,
money coming in. I,
yeah,
I just love the stories, from rags to riches. The
yeah,
fact that these two Hollywood stars have come in and all the adversity, and
yeah.
they had to take a few hard hits to begin with. It wasn't
Yep,
all smooth sailing, and then they had to
mm,
go backwards before they could start going forwards.
yep,
And it's a real story of humanity and all the locals. And I
yeah,
think probably the other people in Wales hate Wrexham because they're sort of jealous that they're getting all the
yeah,
attention, all the money. But I think it's
yeah,
just a nice story, to see this
yeah,
really struggling community and club,
yeah,
and because of these two Hollywood stars are coming in, it's
yeah,
created so much life for the whole community. So
yeah.
that's another one where, yeah, it's I love soccer. I'm a soccer player and coach, and anything to do with
Cool.
soccer or football, I really enjoy. But welcome to Wrexham. Yeah, definitely. If you like Ryan Reynolds, you should
Yeah.
check it out.
Love Ryan Reynolds. They joked about Hugh Jackman buying a club so they could have
Oh,
rivals, you know.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
because
because they're really
actually,
good mates off camera too.
oh no, yeah, they are the best of mates. But the other thing to watch out for is there is a Wrexham Deadpool in in Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, one of the football players are in it.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll
Yeah,
I'll, I'll look out for a few
so
cameos.
yes, there's a lot of cameos.
Yeah,
But I don't want to spoil too much. I don't want to spoil too much.
no,
Well, just want to give a because I noticed on your website you do crime writing workshops and manuscript coaching. Just want to touch on that a little bit in case there's anyone out there that wants a little bit of
yeah.
help
It's
with
kind
their
of,
writing.
you'll see the banner behind me.
Yep.
I've started this kind of side gig, and again, this is just another example of some of the side projects that have sort of flowed out of my having published a few crime fiction novels. Because I'm a former police officer, I started getting approached by other Australian crime writers saying, "I'm writing a crime manuscript. Can you please give me some information about police procedures, because I'm just not sure." So I started doing sort of Zoom one-on-one sessions with people, just as a bit of a favor. And then I thought, well, maybe this could be a bit of a side gig, and so I'm promoting it now as a bit of a service that I offer, and people can contact me. They send me an email with their questions. I can give them feedback as to
Yep.
whether it's the sort of thing that I can answer. I don't profess to be the expert on all things policing, but I think I've got enough information there that I can help most people. And then what
Yeah.
we do is we organize a Zoom session and we'll go through it. So they'll have, and what I'll say to me is, look, I can't read your entire manuscript, but just tell me, give me your scenario and
Yeah.
what's your question. And they'll say, okay, so here's my scenario. What would happen in the real world?
Yeah.
And then I would explain. And the number of people that would go, oh wow, thank you. I had no idea. And these are things that I thought people just kind of knew. But
Yeah.
what's becoming so obvious to me is that we're seeing Australian crime writers, and I've read novels by pretty big name Australian authors who you read their stories, and in terms of their police procedures, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
And because a lot of it is no one's told them any different. And
Yeah.
most people in Australia, if you ask them what happens in the world of policing, they're influenced by what they see on American
Yeah.
movies, TV, or UK movies and TV shows. Things like making reference to the Miranda warning. You have the right
Yeah.
to remain silent.
Yeah.
Anything you
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
can and will be used against you in a court of
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
Well, that's an American thing, and the
Yeah.
Miranda warning isn't in Australia. That's a
Yeah.
case law in America. We do a similar thing where we have to explain to them that they do not have to answer any questions, but
Yeah.
that's a typical example. So look, we can flesh it out, but because of I was constantly seeing people getting things wrong and making reference to American terminology. I think, no, we don't do that here in Australia.
Yeah.
So I started doing this one-on-one consultation to help writers get the facts correct in their manuscript, just to tweak. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you got to rewrite everything, but here's some information that if you're going to say this is the scenario, it's not going to happen this way. So you might
Yeah.
need to rethink the way you're going to describe it. And then as a result of that, I'm also starting to produce some videos as well, which I'm putting up on our Genre Fiction podcast
Nice.
YouTube channel as well. And isn't that bloody hard trying to get a YouTube channel started from scratch?
Yeah.
Trying to get subscribers, and that's a highly
Yeah.
competitive platform as well. So
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of tinkering with a few things there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, because you brought up the Miranda rights and all that stuff, I did find this article talking about the tropes of, and I'm sure it translates from books to films, and you can touch on it as well. But it's basically uh, an article from Comic Book Resources called "10 Cringiest Police Procedural Tropes."
Yeah, I had a look at
So,
that one when you sent it to me.
so I thought we could just go through it a little bit, and you can just touch on um, how much you hate it or love it, and what would be better in that kind of scenario. But the first one is gunshot wounds that go through and through.
Yeah, I do have I do have a couple of videos in mind where I'm going to talk about reference to guns, and but yeah, you do see that a lot where there's police shootouts in an
Yeah,
alleyway and there's rounds flying everywhere. It's great
yeah,
entertainment on TV, but um generally shootouts don't occur. Most shootings happen where within close proximity, where you're speaking to someone and it's in a highly volatile situation. They produce a knife and it's within 5 meters and there's a
yeah,
shot. You have to act very quickly. Very rarely are there
yeah,
shootouts in alleyways. But yeah, the whole idea of someone getting shot, they get shot in the arm and then back on duty the next day with a
yeah,
bandage on,
yeah,
all this sort of stuff. Yeah,
yeah. It's not like that in the real world. Um,
no.
okay, number nine, police who always bend the rules.
Yeah, you got the Dirty Harrys, the Real
Yeah,
Breakers, the Mel Gibson's character on Lethal Weapon,
yeah,
sort of very unhinged and breaking the rules and doing it for the greater good. And they always come out, the Teflon coated, always come out smelling like
yeah,
roses. Most of those rule breaking, you'd get suspended or sacked pretty quickly in the real world
yeah,
if you did a lot of these things.
yeah. Sorry, the cables stuck around my chair. Um, all right. Now, I'm not sure you can relate to this one all that well, but women police who wear heels.
Oh, I saw that one. Yeah, isn't that a fashion statement?
Yeah,
No, yeah, no,
it's just
no.
it's just not
Uh,
practical, you know?
No, like even our women uniform officers are wearing very similar. What the men and women wear in uniform now is wearing your very comfortable, chunky rubber boots with the sort of almost paramilitary style
Yeah,
cargo trousers with the elastic bands at the bottom, and they wear their body worn
yeah,
their load bearing vest with all their accoutrements on their vests and utility belt. And so what the women are wearing is highly practical and
yeah,
resembles what the men wear. The
yeah,
female detectives wear obviously have to be very sensible clothing and
yeah,
business attire and
yeah,
and appropriate footwear. So no, I've yet to see a female detective wearing high heels.
yeah. Okay. Missed Miranda warnings. They're basically saying that, like, how they get off because their rights weren't read to them or something like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think the context of that is saying it's way too easy to kind of create an opportunity for the bad guy to get off, particularly a really bad villain who's a gangster or and they get off and they thumb their nose to the authorities because the police officers have made a mistake with
Yeah.
not reading them their rights. Um, the thing is that could happen in reality, but I think what they're
Yeah.
saying is that's become a bit of a cliche in
Yeah.
sort of storylines.
Yeah. The quick one now. Now, I'm guessing this is one of your least favorite or most hated tropes because of how you've written Jared O'Connor in your books, but divorced cops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. I actually talk a lot about this one. It's
Yeah.
the cliche detective. They're usually broken. They've got inner
Yeah.
demons. They're usually divorced. They're estranged from their kids. They're probably an alcoholic, or they've got some sort of
Yeah.
mental health issue, or um they're all consumed by their job. They've got no outside life. They live alone.
Yeah.
Maybe they live with their cat. Usually they come home from work and they're met by their cat and they feed their cat and they put their gun on the coffee table and they pull out their laptop and they're already back at work and they're just
Yeah.
these kind of hollow people who
Yeah.
live and breathe for the job. And that's
Yeah.
that real classic cliche of the detective, that stereotype, broken, alcoholic, divorced. And that's not the case. I think that's
Yeah.
a cliche that's been overdone.
Yeah. Yeah. Number five, informants who know everything.
Yeah, they say that that's kind of it's convenient to wheel in an informant who provide a bit of backstory, or it's
Yeah.
convenient for the detectives to get the word on the street
Yeah.
rather than having to do some genuine police work. And it's very convenient that these informants just pop into the script to insert some information, and then you never hear from them again.
Yeah. Move the plot forward quick. Um,
Yeah.
Number four, cliched stakeouts.
Yeah, the stakeouts, the police sitting in their cars with a takeout coffee and a donut.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing about stakeouts, it could be the case where police or detectives might kind of follow a suspect and sort of track their movements a little bit. But this whole idea of uh, detectives sitting in their car for 12 hours staking out a suspect doesn't really happen these days, particularly with modern policing,
Yeah.
because if you have a high level, a good crim, a good suspect, we've got a surveillance unit that will do that.
Yeah.
So we can quickly get the surveillance unit, and it's their job to do
Yeah.
surveillance. So you as the detective don't need to be sitting there
Yeah.
in your own time, off duty, doing a
Yeah.
stakeout. It doesn't happen because
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I don't know too many coppers that are that dedicated that they would spend a night away from their families, not
Yeah.
getting paid. And they're certainly not going to get paid overtime to be doing stakeouts.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the real world, if you've got your detective doing a 12-hour stakeout, eating donuts and drinking takeout coffee, rethink that because they would probably get the surveillance unit in to do that for
Yeah.
them, and they can go back to doing what they really need to do
Yeah.
and gathering evidence and
Yeah.
interviewing witnesses.
Yeah. It does seem like a little bit like inconvenient and just more important things to do.
Yeah.
Um, Number three, hating the consultant.
Yeah, do get those shows where they bring in the consultant, whether it's a psychic medium or it's a forensic consultant. Whether that's American thing in Australia, that's not really we don't really have consultants anyway. So I
Yeah.
think if you are writing a story where and it's an Australian-based story where you've got some sort of security expert or some sort of external civilian consultant working with police, maybe there might be some cases where there might be like a particular forensic expert comes in, but generally the resources that we use are people who are already employed in government agencies and it's their job. We don't
Yeah.
generally have consultants coming in. So that's probably more of an American thing because the American policing system is so disjointed and fragmented.
Yeah.
They've got so many police departments that sometimes they might need to bring in these kind of civilian consultants that
Yeah.
work part-time for the police. We don't really have that here.
Yeah. Number two, magical forensics.
Yeah, the old thing is very convenient that the forensic results come back within 20 minutes because they've got to get that information in to
Yeah.
fit within a 1 hour episode.
Yeah.
Forensic results can take weeks sometimes. So
Yeah.
you've still got to be keeping yourself busy and conducting investigations while you're waiting for the forensic results to come in. And look, forensic technology is improving all the time. There's some wonderful things that they can do, but yeah, it's almost like these CSI shows are always trying to
Yeah.
come up with something
Yeah.
new, groundbreaking stuff that's gonna, wow, this is just
Yeah.
groundbreaking. Generally, it's still good old fingerprints, DNA, that sort of stuff. Is still the
Yeah.
bread and butter of what police
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. It's much like the old lawyer shows. How it's all solved in one episode. Like, oh, we solved the case.
Yes,
When in
yes,
reality it goes much longer. There's this brilliant Netflix show called The Lincoln Lawyer, and the whole season is one case. So
yes,
it's like
yes,
it takes time. It's not just
yeah,
woo.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, number one. And this is my favorite. Whiteboards that look like craft projects. They
Yeah.
got everything panned out.
Yes, with the wool, the lines of string on the
Yep.
on the pins, but, linking
Yeah.
suspects and
Yep.
uh yeah. Look, it's great on screen for to show, the viewers can see the links between the suspects and
Yep.
the suspect profiles, and they've got arrows linking the different suspects, and you
Yep.
see that. But look, in reality, police don't use those whiteboards because number one, there's confidentiality. You never know who's going to
Yeah.
walk into the room and see that
Yep.
information. And it's all computerized now anyway. We can do spreadsheets and everything's done. We can track evidence and linkages between witnesses and suspects. It's all done. We got computer software that does all that now. So there's no need for whiteboards and bits of wall string and post-it notes and sketches and all
Yep.
that sort of stuff. Mugshots up on the whiteboard. It's that doesn't happen.
Yep. Well, there you go. We made it through the article. I'll leave the link in the show notes if you guys want to have a gander at that.
And one thing that irks me the most is where we're seeing American terminology creep into Australian
Yes.
stories. Things like recently I said something about, for example, we don't call police cars squad cars. And I was reading
Yeah.
someone's manuscript and they said, "Oh, thank you so much. I called police cars squad cars because or police are going into the squad room to have a briefing. We don't call our station day room a squad room. We
Yeah.
don't call our police cars squad cars.
Yeah.
And there's other terminologies that have crept in. We don't use the legal term felon. A person's committed a felony. That's not even part of our legal system anymore.
Yeah.
It's either a crime or a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
So all these Americanisms are creeping in, and
Yeah.
the feds are coming in to investigate a homicide. We don't have the feds coming in to investigate homicides. It's the state police. I could bang on for ages, but that's
Yeah.
that's for anyone who's interested, that's what I'm doing. For this reason is I'm creating this series of kind of
Yeah.
tutorial videos where I kind of talk about this stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting because of how much Hollywood affects just everyone. Like everyone gets their ideas from Hollywood. And way back when, I don't know if you knew this, we Australia made the very first full feature movie of all time. Like it was an old Ned Kelly movie, obviously. But
Yep, yep,
then I think for some like the government was worried about copycats, people running out, well, wanting to rekindle the bushrangers and all that stuff. So they banned bushranger movies for a time, and then
yep,
Australian cinema just went, and then America took over. So
yeah,
imagine if they didn't do that, Australia would be the Hollywood, and
yeah,
America would be getting all their tropes from us.
maybe, yeah, yeah.
Um, just want to give your books a quick plug. I know we've talked about The Angels Wept, The Demons Woke, but I don't think we've actually touched on the Shadows Watch. But just give us a rundown for those who may be interested in, you know, some crime fiction that's accurate with good terminology.
Well, I like to think so. And look, to be honest, maybe I've fallen victim of. Look, I have to admit, one of my early admissions is that one of my bad guys did get shot, and he got shot in the shoulder conveniently, and he survived. I had to find a part of the body where he could get shot
Wouldn't die.
and live. And I
Yeah,
actually think that in the second book he gets shot again, and this time maybe it's in the leg or something. So
yeah,
look, I too am guilty of some of these things in the interest of telling an interesting yarn.
yeah.
Yeah, so the first book, the Angel's Work, was more about me sharing my own personal experiences and a couple of
Hmm.
cases that really influenced me. So there's a lot of myself got poured into the first book. And the second book, The Demon's Wake, was about kind of ramping things up a little bit and coming up with a more complex plot and see if I could raise the bar in terms of the storyline and
Yep.
complexity of these sort of parallel storylines. And then The Shadows Watch is kind of book three in the series where things really turn pear-shaped for the lead detective Jared O'Connor. He almost becomes a vigilante, and it's kind of one of those what would you do? What would you do to protect your family? Would you kill someone else
Oh,
in
wow.
the interest of justice, where justice can't be served in the courts? Would you take vengeance into your own
Yeah.
hands if the opportunity arose? And what would you do if you were pushed to the brink, if you'd lost a loved one and then you were seeking your revenge
Yeah.
and you knew who the perpetrator was?
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of raising those questions of how far could he be pushed before he gets tipped over the edge. So I really, for me, the third book in the series, I really wanted to test the boundaries of how
Yeah.
far I could push my character and also push my writing.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that third one.
Nice. That's interesting that, because when did that one come out? Um,
It came out last year,
last
end
year.
of
Yeah.
end of last year, so it's been out for a while now, and they're all available through my publisher, Hawkeye Publishing, is where all three books are available.
Cool. Yeah, because a friend of ours did a movie very much like that, pushing the boundary of how far you would go for revenge.
Okay.
Brilliant. It's on Stan. It's called The Cost, and it's just basically, um, it's a brother and the husband of a woman that was raped and murdered, and the perpetrator got out early, and then so they kidnapped him and planned to, just do all
I
the,
have heard of that one. I
yeah.
haven't seen it, but I think I've seen the preview to it. Yeah, it's
It
it's an interesting pretense.
it's brilliant. It's brilliantly done, and it's just all about that question: how far would a normal person go for revenge? Would you go through with it?
Oh,
It
actually,
asks that
yes, I have.
question.
That's an Australian story,
Yeah, Australian.
and they
Yeah,
take they I won't no spoilers, but they take him out bush
yeah,
to kill him,
yeah,
and then it goes. Yeah, I have seen it. I have seen it. Yeah, it
yeah.
was a
Wow, there you go.
really interesting story. Yeah,
Yeah, I just love the whole tension.
yeah,
When you get pulled, they've got a body in the boot. The cop pulls them over because they've got a tail light out.
yes, yeah,
And it's just being a cop that's being friendly. Oh, you got a tail. Oh no, I'll pop it open. I'll have a look.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, Matthew Holmes, he's been on the podcast a few times. He's a brilliant filmmaker.
Oh, yeah, no, it was pretty impressive. For it looked like it was sort of a low budget Australian film, but it
Yeah,
was the tension was terrific, and how it sort of went pear shaped towards the end, and you didn't really
yeah,
know how it was going. How is this possibly going to resolve itself? It's
yeah,
become an absolute mess, and it
yeah,
kind of ends up as a bit of a mess.
yeah. That was his third film. He's working on another one at the moment, a World War II or World War One film. Um, but no, he's brilliant. Check out Matthew Holmes, guys. He's a brilliant, underrated filmmaker who just if people just give him the funding, he has struggled getting funding half the time. But
Yeah, I know the film industry are really struggling.
yeah, he's won a lot of awards overseas and stuff like that, but they still won't back him all that much. So
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. So are you working on anything right now? Any secret projects?
No, I'm not. I I'm just still tinkering with with the podcast. The
Yeah,
podcast platform has been audio up until now on all the audio platforms, and now
hmm
just embarking on converting a lot of that content in video format because
yeah,
I've retained all the video recordings, and trying to get that up onto YouTube and trying to build
yeah,
the Genre Fiction Podcast YouTube channel, which
yeah.
is really slow going. It's a real hard grind.
It is. It
Um,
is.
so we've already got a lot of content from 30 plus interviews that we've already done with our guests and getting that content up, but also I'm creating new content. I'm learning to be a content creator
Yeah,
in filming my own little sort of amateur videos where I'm talking about, writing authentic crime fiction, as you can see here.
yeah,
So they're the kind of two things I'm putting my energies into because it's fun and I enjoy it.
yeah,
Um, and because of that, because of the podcast, it's creating so many opportunities, and people are just emailing me saying, "Hey, we've got a writers' festival coming up. Would you deliver a 2 hour workshop about crime writing, or would
wow,
you sit on the panel?" So I've got about 4 writers' festivals coming up over the next 6 months, just through again putting myself out there and people starting to sort of pay attention to some of the things that we're doing. So it's been keeping me busy, and while that's going on, I do have a brand new manuscript which I'm still working on and going through editing phase
yeah,
and working out what I'm going to do with that down the track. But at the moment, my energies are just I'm playing
yeah.
around with all these kind of side gigs, which is a lot of good fun.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I have a new job where I work basically 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I have all this freedom in the mornings now to be more creative too, and
Yeah,
it's almost like I'm semi-retired, like just not used to having this free time. Um,
yeah.
so have you got any advice for people that are tinkering and becoming a full-time author?
I think just have realistic expectations. It's a slow grind. We could talk for hours around the different options around publishing, and now that there's self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and
Yeah,
and I think traditional publishing is getting more and more difficult, and all the sort of checkpoints you've got to go through
yeah,
to get your submissions recognized, going through agents or publishers, and it's
yeah.
so hard. Actually, one thing I did interesting, one thing I would recommend, there's one coming up, I think in October. The Australian Society of Authors do a literary speed dating thing. I only did it a couple of weeks ago, where you get 3 minutes to pitch to
Oh, wow.
a selected publisher or agent. So they advertise it, and it's first in best dressed. And I was kind of waiting with my finger on the mouse. As soon
Yeah,
as it opened, the registration's open, I got my submission in quickly. So it's the Australian Society of Authors, their literary speed dating, and they'll list a whole bunch of Australian literary agents and publishers, and you can put a submission in to get an opportunity to in front of them. It's on Zoom.
wow.
You've got 3 minutes to pitch your story. And basically they come on and they go, okay, nice to meet you. Go. You've got 3 minutes. You go blah blah blah, and you've got to have a script prepared. And I did that recently, and in front of two quite big Australian publishers, and as a result, one of them's come back and has shown interest in my manuscript.
Wow.
Um, so look, it's no guarantees, because we all know
No.
that the
Yeah,
chances of success
yeah,
are very slim, but it's still, you got to kind of seek out these opportunities,
yeah,
enter competitions. If you can enter a competition and get shortlisted, that's all great for your resume. But I think you have to be prepared to be patient and play the long
yeah,
game. I think when I first started, I wrote my first manuscript. And I thought, right, it's cool. I've edited it and it's ready to be put out into the world. I want to get it published today. You got to rein yourself in, because I'll guarantee that it needs a lot more editing, and you just got to play the long game. You just got to be patient and just chip away, do little things, start getting yourself immersed in the writing community, go to writers' conferences, do workshops, network with people, and just through connections, things will start to build, and you'll start getting traction. But I've been probably doing this. Probably I've invested my energies into it almost full time for the last probably nearly 4 years now, and I feel I've still got a lot to learn.
yeah,
But I'm just kind of feel like I'm starting to get a bit of traction now, and and I think there's still a long road ahead. But I think if you go into it with your eyes wide open around the reality of just how difficult it is to get published, but don't
yeah,
let that put you off. Write
yeah,
write for your own reasons. I started writing because I had something I wanted to say, and I had to get some stuff off my chest. You're going to write for your own reasons. So don't write thinking I'm going to get published, I'm going to earn a lot of money and become a bestseller.
yeah,
Write for your own reasons.
yeah.
And then if you're passionate about what you're writing, I think success will come.
Awesome. Great advice. Great little soundbite I can put together there. Um,
Cool.
well, thanks.
And sorry, just
Yep.
as a segue, I found um, Animal Farm, George Orwell, Animal Farm is the book I was talking about
George Orwell.
earlier.
Okay.
George Orwell, Animal Farm
George
is
Orwell,
is
that's it.
that's the book that, if you wanted to
Yeah.
insert into schools, would be interesting. That
Yes.
would certainly throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah.
It's about these animal characters on a farm,
Yeah.
but they represent. It's almost like the um, world politics are told through the eyes of these animal characters, and the power
Hmm.
plays between different animal characters, and who's taken
Yeah.
over each other's turf, and power plays. So
Yeah.
yeah, Animal Farm, George Orwell.
Yeah. Well, because I'm pretty sure in some schools, 1984 is in the curriculum in high school. Um,
Yes, that's the Stephen King book, isn't it?
no, that's Orwell as well.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where they got the idea from Big Brother. You know?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a book that's ahead of its time. It's
Yeah.
scary how much stuff is translated in modern times to that
Yeah.
book.
I'll have to read that one. I've never read it. I've heard a lot about
I
it, but I need
I
to read
picked
it.
it up. I went into this. I was on holidays in Kiama a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago, and found like it was a massive second hand bookstore, like books from floor to ceiling, and it's just everything. And it had like classics. And I was just like, oh, War of the Worlds, ooh, 1984, ooh, and all these books. I was just like I think I went in there twice. And I was just like, oh, these books, you know?
Yeah, and I think I need to immerse myself in some of those classics. Oh, and
Yeah.
just remind me, in terms of what my plans are in the future, I'm actually enrolling myself into university next year, and
Oh,
I want to
cool.
do a Bachelor of Arts creative writing because I want to learn more. You know, there's the
Yeah.
old saying, "You don't know what you don't know,"
Yeah.
and I want to learn what it is that I don't know. So I'm actually that's my plan next year is to be a full-time uni student, which I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to. Just to
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll get some culture into me. There'll be some
Yeah.
exposure to some of these
Yeah.
old classics, and I think there
Yeah.
can be a lot of learnings about traditional classic good writing.
Yeah.
I suppose we're so used to seeing all the commercialized novels
Yeah.
these days,
Yeah.
but some of the classics. But can I say some of the classics don't always necessarily mean they're good. Like one book,
Yeah.
I tried to read Catcher in the Rye.
Mm-hmm.
Um, J.D. Salinger, like I'm sorry, I really struggled through that,
Yeah.
and it's meant to be one of these classics, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I pushed through. I wanted to say I've read it, but I found that a really hard read.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's it. But I think it's just something about old books. Like, I mean, War of the Worlds is like written in 124 years ago or something. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm reading it, I'm going, wow, this is ahead of its time, you know, and
yes,
that's the kind of thing because I'm going to get into writing more and more. Like I'm like you, like I'm podcast heavy at the moment,
yep.
and getting back into a bit of music as well. But when I really knuckle down and write, I want to have that influence of the old stuff, like just
Mm,
and try and be ahead of my time, like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I want to start challenging myself to start posing those really difficult questions about humanity.
yeah,
I've always liked watching documentaries or movies that really question who are we as
yeah,
humans and some of those deeper, darker questions.
yeah,
With some of these classic books, they ask those questions and they really
yeah,
challenge us to take a look at ourselves and where are we
yeah,
heading as a species and
yeah,
those sort of ideas I really think are very intriguing.
yeah, yeah. I think John Carter. I think there's a book called John Carter. It's like supposed to be one of the very first sci-fis. I might look up who did it
I've
because they
seen the
did,
movie John Carter.
yeah, because they did a movie and they're going, oh, it's a rip off of this, it's a rip off of that, it's a rip off of Superman. And I'm going like, "Okay, did you look when the book was written?
Mm, mm.
Let's see when it was when the book was written. Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote it.
Well, there you go. You've set me a challenge. I want to go back and start reading some of these old classics, like was it 1984 and
Yep.
Animal Farm and John Carter, all these old books that were so ahead of their time. And
Yeah.
it kind of, I think it's a really good way to immerse yourself back in the past. The what was in the mind of the
Yeah.
author back in 1940 when these books were being written and their prediction of
Yeah.
what the future is going to be, the future that
Yeah.
we're now living in.
Yeah.
I find that really intriguing.
Yeah. Okay. So the first John Carter book out of many, many, many is 1912. Um,
Oh, okay. There you go.
and it put in because he was ahead of his time because he had this idea you go to Mars and the physics are different. Because in John Carter, he goes to Mars and he's like Superman, like he can jump and he
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
and all that stuff. And that well, like it's just I want to know where these people get their concepts before because they're the first one to think about that,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's where I want to get to. I want to think because I mean I talked about it when I was on your podcast. I want to do things differently. I want to push the creative boundaries and think of a different way to do it. Like, I mean, I wrote a flipping book about emus fighting a war and writing letters, and it's just like that's the way I love to think.
Yeah. And I guess I'm thinking it's so hard to come up with a new idea
Yeah.
these days. I guess there's been so many new ideas, we're kind of running out of new ideas, but
Yes.
maybe it's about telling like your story, telling it through a different perspective, telling the
Yes.
story through the perspective of the emus,
Yeah.
um, or where a classic story has a different ending, or things,
Yeah.
like there's the Ned Kelly movie where um, instead of the final confrontation being a failure, they actually succeed. I think what's that? There's a remake of the Ned Kelly story where they they stop the train coming through, or they
Yeah.
try to stop the train coming through, but the train still get through, and that was a pivotal
Yeah.
moment in how it ended up. And what
Yeah.
they've done is they've changed the outcome, and
Yeah.
how could the story have been different if this
Yeah.
set of circumstances were different?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like those sort of things, or what would have happened if the Allies had not won World War II?
Yeah.
Those sort of stories are coming out
Well,
as well now.
there's a show I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it called Man in the High Castle or something, and it's basically a show where the Germans won World War II.
Yes, yeah,
How would life be? It's like I love thinking like those things.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Or if the Japanese had succeeded in New Guinea and
yeah,
invaded Australia,
yeah,
how things could have been different. So we're only talking about fairly recent modern
yeah,
history, but yeah, I like those kind
yeah,
of deeper stories around maybe what the future could look like. And
yeah,
we've seen all the different
yeah,
dystopian movies. A lot of them have got zombies in them,
yeah,
um, but yeah, I
yeah,
think it's the challenge to really get people
yeah,
thinking.
yeah. And just back on the Japanese because this movie's so good. Godzilla Minus One, which came out late last year. It's a Japanese making a Godzilla movie again, but it's set right after World War II. So they've come back, their morale's low, and then here's Godzilla. Like it's just like, the world's not going to help them, and
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
a brilliant film. It's on Netflix, but you gotta, and I insist you gotta watch it in Japanese. You can have with English subtitles because there's an English dub, but it's not as
Oh,
good.
is it a movie or a series?
It's a movie,
Okay.
and it
There was a
won.
series, there was a new Godzilla. Was it? No, it was, yeah, I think it was a new series that I started watching. I really struggled I
Yeah,
didn't push through. I only got through the first, maybe the first episode and I kind of stopped.
yeah. No, this is a movie. They won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects this
Okay,
year or
I'll check
last
it
year,
out.
and it cost less than 15 million to make. you know? And then you got the American Godzilla where it's like, like $250 million budget, and then the
Yeah, yeah,
Japanese just tell a beautiful story. I mean, even to the
yeah,
point where if Godzilla wasn't in the movie, it would still be a good movie. Like it's just so well written, so well acted, and
yeah, yeah.
it's just story of redemption, and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful film.
All right, I'll make a point of checking it out.
Yeah. After you watch Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, very shortly, I'm going to head off and go to the movies, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah, cool, cool. Well, just thank you for coming on. Give yourself a plug. Where people can buy your books, where people can follow you, and all
Well,
that
I
jazz.
reckon the biggest, I mean, I've got my website, jackroney.com.au, but the biggest thing that if people are keen to check out our genre fiction podcast YouTube channel,
Mm.
click that bloody subscribe button for you
Yes.
for us, will you? Because that will
Yeah.
really help us. So I'll tell you what, it's a hard gig trying to get a new YouTube channel up and running
Yeah.
when you're seeing all these people. And I think I've even, asked
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
some
Some
advice and
advice.
tips
Yeah.
around how do you get, I think you just got
Yeah.
to be prepared to play the long game and just
Yeah.
keep working at it
Yeah.
and chipping away. Just like any social media platform, it's hard at first
Yeah.
to build it. But yeah, so check it out, the John
Yeah.
the Fiction Podcast YouTube channel. Click that
Yeah.
subscribe button, and
Yeah.
tons more videos to come with interviews with authors, writing
Yeah.
industry experts, as well as my
Yeah.
crime fiction series.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much again for coming on, Jack.
No, thanks, Jamie. It's always a pleasure. So I'm keen to come back for episode number 4. So you know how
Oh.
to reach me if you want to just chew the fat.
Yep. Awesome, awesome. Well, guys, you know the deal. thetrueandthefictional@gmail.com if you want to reach out. Stories_podcast on Instagram. We're on X now, formerly known as Twitter. Yeah, just reach out if you want to have a chat, and check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells and Martin Kurtz, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, mate. See you, everyone.
In 1932, the Australian Army declared war on 20,000 emus and lost. It's a part of Australian history that not many know about. Maybe that's because history is written by those who win. So if you want to hear the full story of the Great Emu War of 1932, then check out my book, Letters from the Emu War. Read letters, newspaper articles, and journal entries. With every turn of the page, you will gain a deeper understanding of the life and times of emus at war. So head on over to jabryden.com and grab a signed copy today.